What's up, techies? Cam here from Coder Career. If you're new around here, I'm an ex-technical recruiter and current software engineer, and I've created this channel to give you my perspective from both sides of the table. Today's video is about the most common questions you're likely to encounter in an interview scenario and how you can deal with them. These interview questions could either come up in the phone stage, so when you're being called on the phone and going through usually with HR, could also as well come up in a face-to-face interview, generally what we'd call a cultural interview, so that might be with HR and a technical leader. It's unlikely that any of these questions will come up in a technical interview, and I won't be covering any technical questions today, so I won't be explaining how to invert a binary tree, luckily for me. Question 1 is the classic, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, I'm not going to make the obvious Family Guy reference here, but those who know. This question is focused on work, but in our context, it can mean general engineering skills. So it's not necessarily like, what do you expect to be doing within our company in 5 years? It would be like, where do you expect to be as an engineer? What you shouldn't say is you shouldn't discuss like your personal life, say, oh, I want to be engaged, I want to have a house, I want to have 3 dogs. It's about, I want to be proficient in React so that I can teach it to the more junior members of the team, for instance. In terms of what I was usually trying to ascertain here back when I was a technical recruiter was whether the candidate wanted to go down the management path or the individual contributor path. So there's no right or wrong answer to this, and both are great careers. It's just a good idea to keep in mind which you'd personally favor going down. Like for me, in my personal career, I think I'll prefer going down the management side of things, just because I enjoy the people side of engineering quite a lot. But equally as well, you can discuss the IC track and basically explain how you want to get there. So if you want to be an engineering manager, then you need to have a history of mentoring more junior members of your team. And if you want to go down the IC route, it would be great to talk about open source contributions you've made, explaining what makes you an engineer that's a cut above most others. If you want to be able to deal with this question very succinctly, I would say just think of a skill that maybe you have a little bit of right now, but you think you could have a path to improving it over 5 years. I come back to the React example again. Say I have a junior level experience with it now, but I want to be able to get to the point where I'm mentoring people with it in 5 years' time. So I'm going to think about a plan how I'm going to get there. I'm going to do XYZ course. I'm going to take the technical responsibility for XYZ projects and that sort of thing. The only thing I would say don't do with the 5-year question is don't say you're going to be looking for another job or working elsewhere. I don't see why you would, but people say all kinds of things when I'm panicked in an interview. Don't say that you're going to try and work at a FANG company, even if that is your plan. That wouldn't be a clever thing to do unless you're interviewing for that specific company. 2 is, how do you deal with conflict? Now, I personally find that this comes up a lot in startup interviews because there's a lot of high-level decisions to be made all the way down the chain of command. So you're likely to be involved in some kind of conflict situation with someone who might be your superior, junior, your peer. There's a lot of potential for conflict, particularly in startup environments. So if you're working for a corporation, the question still might come up, although you're less likely to encounter it in a real working environment. That being said, it's still very good to be prepared, of course. So what I would say is you've got to answer this realistically, but think of a good strategy. So the best way to sum up your answer is to say that you'll approach it by looking at the battle as being yourself and your colleague against the problem rather than yourself versus your colleague. That's also a good way to look at conflict situations in real life, and that's something I've done to try and be less upset with people if they disagree with me. It's just thinking about the other person's taking a different approach to that problem. How can I learn from their approach? What can I take from their approach to strengthen the overall approach? And you've got to look at it as a battle, as I said, a battle against a problem, not a battle against your colleague, because otherwise, if you don't deal with the interview question that way, but both if you actually get in the workplace and you end up fighting it over, and you're going to have a bad time. Question 3 is the classic, what's your biggest weakness? The thing to remember here is that it's a paradoxical question because they're not actually asking for your biggest weakness here. It's a complete trick question. Whilst they want to see like a degree of humility, primarily to show that you're not afraid of constructive feedback, because that is a huge thing, no matter your seniority as a dev, especially as a junior, but no matter all the way up and down the chain of command, you need to show a bit of humility and accept some constructive feedback. What we want to know is your capacity to understand your weak areas and build actionable, like smart targets to improve yourself. So if I put it in non-technical terms, recently, and to be honest, most of my life I've been absolutely awful at running. So I've been gradually working up my pace and distance via a clear and steady plan, like an actual plan. Like I know that in 3 months' time, I want to be able to run a 10K in X time, for example, and you can apply the same logic to any technical skill. Say I want to get better at CSS, I'm going to spend every day playing Flexbox Froggy and Grid Garden as if I'm working out at the gym to try and improve my skills to the point where I can build a layout without thinking as much. That would be a CSS example, and there's plenty of other examples you can think of, like automating tasks with Python and that sort of thing. You need to explain how you're on that path to improving yourself and why it will become a strength. It's about flipping the question around. That's the best way to do it. Question 4 is what makes you interested in our company. This is an extremely common question, and I would say 99% of interviews, this question will come up at some point. There is absolutely no hack to deal with this question in terms of if you haven't researched a company. You need to research a company, otherwise you're just wasting your own time and the recruiter's time as well. However, what I would say to deal with the question is when you research a company, you should write down one thing that interests you from the technical standpoint and one thing from the cultural standpoint. So technical might be, okay, they're migrating everything to a cloud service like AWS, for instance. That's interesting. You can talk about how you've been experienced in similar projects before and what you could add to the team and why you think it's great that they're embracing the cloud. For a cultural one, it might be that they love remote work and you think remote work is great because it allows for a better work-life balance. Maybe if you have kids, it allows you to plan your life around them much more, and it means you can put your family first. So if you bring in one from each side, that's great because you're going to impress both HR and technical leadership as well at the same time. Question 5, and the final question I'll address today, is why are you leaving your current job? This is a very difficult question to answer properly, and that's why I've left it till last, especially if you haven't been at your previous role long, which can often be the case in tech. In this situation, I'm defining not very long as less than a year. I know there are people, perhaps a generation above me, that would consider even leaving a job within 3 years as not staying somewhere a long time. But trends have changed, and I was born in '95, and for people my sort of age, I think the average person stays at a job for maybe 2 years or so. So I find honesty is the best policy here, particularly if you haven't been there long. So chances are you're going to have your references taken at some point later down the line, and you don't want the offer to be pulled because they're going to want to speak to your previous company. So you can explain how you believe that making the move will enhance your career. Obviously, avoid saying it's about money, even if that's the case, because it will just imply that you'll leave as soon as you get a better offer. And the way the tech market is at the moment, everyone's trying to outbid each other, and people can sort of leave their job every 6 months, and I wouldn't suggest doing that first and foremost anyway, but there are plenty of people that do that. So HR will really want to avoid that because it takes like 3 or 4 months to even get to the person being as productive as they possibly can be. Like, it takes a lot of ramp up to get an engineer going, especially if they need to learn a new stack. So why would you throw money at someone who's going to leave maybe only half the way after doing that? So in the world of human resources, reward is basically divided into 2 categories. So extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic is quite simple. It's just basically monetary benefits. So, that's obviously like your salary, your bonuses. I think even like health insurance, like a company car, that all comes under that umbrella of extrinsic reward. Intrinsic reward, which is the opposite, is the job satisfaction, essentially. It might be I'm learning new skills, I'm able to work from home because I can spend more time with my family. Something like that is basically they want to hear about your intrinsic reward. So I want to be able to build myself into being a better engineer, a better person, more well-rounded individual, and the sort of person that people want to work with. HR is going to be very impressed if you say that you're leaving your current job because you value intrinsic reward more. So whilst I don't suggest you lie at all, it's a good idea to basically think about your intrinsic reasons for leaving, not just your extrinsic. It's very easy to get bogged down in the money, and there are plenty of people that can testament that if you leave a job for a lot of money that isn't as satisfying, you'll just be miserable, and really money doesn't matter after a certain point as long as you can meet your needs. You really need the job satisfaction as well. I mean, just speak to people who earn millions or are unhappy about it. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any topics you'd like me to discuss in the future, just let me know. Or if you felt like there are any questions that I didn't properly address, let me know as well. I'll just answer them in YouTube comments. Until then, thanks for watching, happy coding, and please subscribe.